Are we live? Are we live? I hope we're live because now we're going. So, hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our second broadcast of our spring series of Google Hangouts with PASA alumni. I'm your host, the Alumni Relations Chair for PASA Network, Arlen Viola. Each month, I will host a panel of PASA alumni through the use of Google Hangouts. Each time, we'll be talking about a specific topic that was voted on by current PASA students. So today, we'll be talking about an often discussed topic within the higher ed and student affairs programs, EdD and Ph.D. programs. So as always, it is my hope that through the use of Google Hangouts, I'm creating a platform that allows our PASA alumni to share their successes and knowledge with current PASA students, as well as other folks in the higher education community. So here's a rundown of what to expect in this Google Hangout. So in about a few moments from now, I'll have our alumni introduce themselves. After intros, we'll have a conversation around the questions that PASA students submitted prior to this Google Hangout. And then after our discussion, we'll take questions from any of our live viewers. Hopefully that'll increase from 1 to 2 last time. And then we'll conclude with our final remarks. We're fortunate to have 3 of our wonderful alumni join us here today on the Google Hangout. So without further ado, I'll have our alumni introduce themselves. So name, year that you graduated from PASA, your current institution, your current office, your position, what you do, and the doctorate that you have earned or are in the process of earning. So I'll have Dan introduce himself.
Sounds good. Now that I'm unmuted. Hi everyone, my name is Dan Hirsch. I am a PASA 09 grad. I currently work at Colby College in Maine, where it is covered in snow, and it's a small private liberal arts college. My position is the Associate Director of Campus Life, and within Campus Life we have student leadership, housing, residence life, and outdoor education, and so I work with all of those. Did I cover everything?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that whole thing about PhD, right? So I'm currently in the PhD program at Colorado State University, which is actually, it's online, so it's a unique part of that. It's called the PhD in Education and Human Resource Studies with a concentration in higher education leadership. So we meet for the summer and do our summer classes in Fort Collins in Colorado. We go back for the first few days of the semester in January, and then the rest of the time is online. And I am one semester and 1 week into my program.
Emily, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Emily Caviglia, and I am PASA class 2007. Currently I'm working at Keck Graduate Institute, which is part of the Claremont Consortium schools. It's one of the newer schools. We had our first cohort come in 2000. It's all graduate in STEM. And I am working in student services. I'm currently the director of student services here at KGI, which means I'm responsible for a multitude of offices, including disability services, student government, campus activities, health insurance. You know, you name it, somebody's probably calling me for an emergency right now. So I'm also the on-call dean for the school. Let's see, what did I miss? EDD. So I got an EDD. And I graduated from 2010. I actually did the EdD at USC, so I just continued kind of straight through from my graduate master's program in PASA to the EdD right after, and I graduated in 2010. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
And then Jonathan.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Wang. I am currently the Assistant Director for our Asian Pacific American Student Services Cultural Center here at USC. I graduated PASA in 2012, so about 2.5 years ago. I am currently a first year in the EdD program. Just finished my first semester, and I guess I'm 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in now, into our second semester. And I stopped out for about 2 years after completing my master's in PASA to start my EdD here.
Cool. All right, so we'll transition into the questions. So prior to coming to the PASA program, I never really considered pursuing a doctorate. Being a first-generation college student, I never considered a doctorate as a possibility for my future. It wasn't until coming here and learning from different student affairs professionals and actually taking ethnography with Dr. Tierney that I realized pursuing and earning a doctorate is a goal that I have for myself. So now for all of you, what are the advantages as well as the disadvantages for an EDD? The advantages and disadvantages for a PhD? And anyone can take it away.
Well, I can jump in for a second. I share something that I never really intended. Well, let's start at the beginning. I never intended to go into student affairs. I'm not really totally sure how that happened. And found myself in PASA, loved the experience, and knew that was for me, and I wanted to continue that. So I graduated in '09, and I just started again in school, which is a rough transition.
Oh no, frozen.
Losing signal.
Am I frozen?
Not anymore. We hear you.
So I applied to 2 EDD programs in Southern California, and I was working on a position that was going to open up there. And so I was going to be a lot more regional. I was going to be able to attend in person. And then the job didn't come through, so I sort of reevaluated what I was doing. And through friends at NASPA, I found out about this Colorado State program, and I had a friend who just finished it and highly recommended it. And the appeal to me was that it was online, so if I move in this time period or whatever, it's not going to impact or slow down my study. And it just happens to be a PhD. So I sort of stumbled into that, but I really enjoy we have a real small cohort of like 16 people. And for me, I had gotten a lot of feedback that there was going to be some stigma of having an EDD versus a PhD. That hasn't been my experience in either search that I went through. I was through the 2 EDD programs and accepted into those, and now in the PhD program, I haven't experienced that in that way. I think for me, the difference is whether or not you want to be faculty. I personally don't. I enjoy the practitioner part. Everyone in my cohort is a full-time working professional, and I enjoy that, and we share a lot of professional experiences. So I've really enjoyed the path I took, and it wasn't because it was a PhD or EDD. It was more about the experience and the people also in the program with me.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So from my perspective, my father actually was a faculty member, so I knew that I always wanted to get a doctorate. I just didn't know what, and like most people, I stumbled into the student affairs field because I enjoyed what I did in my co-curriculars and extracurriculars as an undergraduate, and didn't realize until then that you could actually pursue that as a career, and so I really enjoyed it and just continued. EDD PhD was difficult for me. I actually applied both to EDD and PhD and got accepted to various programs. I think that part of the conversation, I agree with Dan that it's if you want to be a faculty member versus a practitioner. But then I think so if you want to be a faculty member, you get a PhD, you do a research-oriented program. If you want to be a practitioner, you do an EDD. I think that's generally the advice that you get. But I agree that it's not always the case. There's some PhDs that are more practice-oriented. There's some EDDs that are more research-oriented, like Columbia or Harvard. You can get your EDD there, and it's very research-oriented. I think more so your doctoral experience. It's highly contingent on the faculty member that you select. So if I had one piece of advice to give any students who are currently looking at doctoral programs is think about what you want to do your research on, and then look at what the current research is being done out there and look at who's doing it. So don't pick a program by school, pick it by area of research and pick it by faculty is what I would recommend if you're looking at the research route. I'd also say my mentors have always told me to go get a doctorate. I've heard different things, and you guys maybe want to chime into that you should get it young, you should get it right away, or some people say you should work a little bit and then get a sense of what you really want to do before you go in and make that huge financial investment if you're doing an ED versus a PhD where sometimes you can get it paid. I think that you could pretty much go either way. I think that it depends on the person. It depends on where you are in your career and what your choices are. But I do think that you have to think about practitioner versus researcher. But I also think that you can do a little bit of both in your career, and that's something that I'm planning to do.
I think for me, choosing to do the EDD after going through PASA, I didn't think I would do a doctorate either. I didn't know that was an option or opportunity. But after working with several faculty members who were both PhD and EDD, And considering the timing of where I was, where I am, I guess, in life, I chose the EDD, partially because I'm at USC and it does offer a pretty strong comprehensive EDD, and the program itself I've seen a lot of people go through, and they've enjoyed it. So I think that was part of the opportunity. Currently, my supervisor's in the second year, so I saw her go through her first year. She recommended that I should at least go to a admissions, event, or take a look at different opportunities. And so when I went, kind of looked through it, I decided to apply, not entirely sure if I was going to accept it or not, but looking just overall timing, and honestly, part of it is employee benefits as well. As a current employee of USC, I do get partial tuition funding as well for the EDD. So just timing of it all and looking at my future and what I want to do as a practitioner, the EDD was probably the better route for me.
Cool. So this next one is actually seems to be like a follow-up to our first question. So are there advantages to pursuing a doctoral degree outside of education? What disadvantages could come from not having an education-centered doctorate?
I can jump in on this one. I think, first of all, I think you definitely don't have to get your degree in education in order to be successful in the field. But I would say, if you're thinking about alternate degrees, I would go even further than the PhD. I'm seeing a lot of dean-level professionals in higher education that have Juris Doctorates. So if you're interested in law is a really great place to be right now because there's so much litigation around Title IX and some of the sexual assault pieces. Having somebody who has a JD in a dean-type position it makes a lot of sense to universities right now, so that's a really great degree. Also, an MBA is also a really great terminal degree. So I would say think bigger. If you're just not just PhD, you don't have to do an education. I would also think JD and MBA too.
I would also offer that there's a lot of programs out there that try and accommodate those kind of interests. That some folks are going to want to look into programs or come even to student affairs from a different angle. So, for example, the one I'm in now, like I said, is education and human resource studies. So that impacts the coursework and the things that we talk about and how we think about how to manage institutions and the different elements and pieces of that. Everything from a small private liberal arts school to, like Colorado State, a large public land-grant institution. We talk about all of it. So I think that's also something to look at. Most programs will list their curriculum, and you can get a good sense of the type of extracurricular or the type of experience and knowledge outside of a traditional education route that you would get from that program based on what curriculum they list on their program website.
And one more thing that it's something that I'm not pursuing, but I have looked at. USC specifically offers joint programs. You're not necessarily saving any time or money doing the joint program. It's essentially doing an EDD and MBA back to back, but they accept you as an EDD and MBA. And so when you finish everything, you actually get both degrees. I believe there's an EDD and JD, but it really depends on the school. Researching some of these programs. You might discover that there are some joint programs out there that you might be interested in and wanting to do both if you feel like you need that practitioner side plus, a business background, which I think a lot more individuals are having as well.
Cool. Now I know some of you kind of already touched upon this in your previous responses. So maybe you can elaborate further. So what factors did you take into account when deciding for your doctoral program or even between an EDD or a PhD program?
I can start. So kind of going off my first answer, it was a little bit about the timing for me. I was looking at where I wanted to be within the near future, planning out my career goals, my next steps. As someone who just finished, I would say just finished is relatively recent, the PASA program. I know the doctoral degree was in my future, and things just fell in line. I enjoy where I am in my position, where I don't feel like I necessarily need to move up anytime soon. I'm comfortable where I am, being able to finish a doctorate, and then from there, kind of looking at where I want to go with my career in the future from there. And so it came down to timing for me. It came down to where I was at just in terms of institution, and just the strength of the degree as well, knowing individuals who have gone through it, knowing faculty members within Rossier who would be able to support what I'm trying to do as well. So it was kind of time, place, and then ultimately where I was at.
Cool.
I think that last piece is really important. It's really important, I think, to talk to alumni of the program that you're looking into, because a PASA or a master's program is a fairly set curriculum, and you have a lot of people who come to the table from very different angles. But I think the experience of a master's program is similar in a lot of ways for everyone in the cohort, and is in a lot of ways intentionally designed to do that. Whereas a dissertation and experience in general, let alone the whole PhD or EDD program, I think there's a lot of variety and variance in the experience based on one's own interests. So I think it's important to talk to the alumni of that program to see how their interests aligned with their ability to complete their degree, how they were selected, or how they were paired with an advisor, what that process was like. I've only been in the program for a semester, and my advisor, we got paired after we joined the program, and we build our committees with that person. And I was paired with someone who's just phenomenal. He's actually the director of the master's program at CSU. So he's really great at helping me think about what I'm doing. He doesn't necessarily know the most about my topic, but he knows a lot about how to do it and how to do it successfully, and how to set up a committee that's going to be helpful in my path. And I heard that a lot from people I know who have completed this program, and it's been my experience. So I think the alumni piece of any program you're considering, regardless of the type of degree, is really, really important.
Yeah, I think for me it was really easy to stay in LA and go to USC. So part of it, I mean, I completely agree with Jonathan that it's a time and place thing, and where you want to be. Maybe you have family that lives in Denver and you want to go to get a PhD there because you can be closer to them. Or I think part of it is a very personal thing too. It's not just your career, it's not just your goals. It's like, how can you fit that with whatever's going on in your life right now? So for me, uprooting wasn't a great option. I wanted to stay, so that hugely factored into my decision as well, that I could maintain my quality of life and also pursue the EDD. So I think that has to be considered. But I think that we all struggle with it. I thought long and hard because I had also heard the story that the EDD is stigmatized and it's looked down upon in the profession. And until I took Estella's Ben Simone's class in the EDD program, she's like, I don't know where all of you guys heard this. I have an EDD, and I was like, okay, well, I guess that answers that question, right? Because it was just really, you guys shouldn't be ashamed, so that I think it's true. You shouldn't be ashamed of whatever doctoral degree you get. You can make of it whatever you choose to make of it, whether it is research, whether it is administration, whether it's nonprofit or K-12 work. Really, it is completely up to you, and you shouldn't base your decision based on the letters that come behind your name.
So it seems like a lot of you have touched upon the next question. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. So what challenges have you experienced within your doctoral programs?
Not having gotten so far into it yet, I think one of the biggest challenges with the EDD, it is you're a practitioner still. You're full-time working and you're full-time student. And so for me, I can be on campus. I'm in a Tuesday night cohort. I can be on campus for over 12 hours a day, and you have to be on. You have different demands, and it's trying to find that balance. Doing your coursework outside of that time, finding time for your personal life, finding time for everything else that you want to do. And And so you have to start recognizing how to prioritize. I think others have much different lists of priorities out there, including family, including other obligations. So it's really finding that balance. And the other thing is just trying to get back into it, trying to be scholarly, be academic, and try to make it worth your time and money, and getting the most out of the degree, and finding that motivation to continue on. Haven't gotten to that dissertation phase, so I'm not sure how that looks like yet. So I'm sure that's going to be a whole different story once I start with that. But just in terms of coursework, it's really finding that motivation, finding that time, and being engaged in class. Sometimes when it hits hour 12 on being on campus, you just kind of want to shut down. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. I think that it's a work-life balance challenge. They say that you're not supposed to do 3 things when you do a doctoral program. You're not supposed to get into or out of a relationship. You're not supposed to change jobs. You're not supposed to, you're also not supposed to move. So basically any kind of major life change, you're supposed to kind of keep everything stable, you know, not do anything crazy because the EDD or PhD is so challenging. And honestly, it's a load of crock. Like, you can really do any of those things and still make it work, but the only thing is that it will become more challenging. It may take you more time to finish. So I certainly had people in my program who, I mean, I did all of those things, the moving, and, you know, I'm like, wow, everything is changing in my life, and I'm doing this program. You know, I had people in my cohort have babies, and then, you know, it just took them a little longer to finish. But I think for the work-life balance piece is really a challenge. I think, and having completed it, let me tell you, Jonathan, I was carrying my computer around with me everywhere that final year, just so I had time to work on my dissertation and complete it, because a 200-page paper, you do it a page at a time, but you still have to kind of put that time in. I took it to bowling alleys, I took it, you know, to, you know, social hangouts. I would work on it beforehand. So you really, but you fit it in. You fit it in 15 minutes a time if you have to. So that's kind of what I would say to that. I think I completely agree. It's work-life balance. It's getting back into sort of a scholarly mode, if you want to say that. And then also, I think, you know, like you were saying towards the end, you really do have to have a lot of internal self-motivation to complete, because there's no one looking over your shoulder to get you to finish. It's not like you're in a class. Once you're ABD and you've passed your quals and you're ready to go, you're doing your research, no one's setting deadlines. You have to set your own timelines and then meet them. And I think that's where a lot of people run into problems with finishing, because they really kind of get distracted from everything else, like their lives, and that's completely okay and normal. I think that having really supportive partners is very helpful, but then also setting deadlines for yourself and trying to meet those deadlines is also really good, because you do have to be motivated. You don't have somebody who's pushing you necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice, and I'd echo that in general. I think a specific way of the work-life balance, I think I just said work-wife, which is ironic, making sure that people around you are supportive, but that includes, you know, significant others and your family and immediate people in your life, but also supervisors and coworkers and everybody in your life, just making sure that people are aware of what you're doing and navigating those relationships is necessary. I had class until a little after 11 o'clock last night Eastern time, and then I had an 8 o'clock or 8:30 Title IX meeting this morning, and everybody in that room knew that I was in class, like 8-9 hours ahead of that. So people are just like very helpful. They actually are really curious what I'm doing, and one of my classes now is like the education finance and everything that goes into that, and so we're actually being able to take things I'm learning like the night before and then apply it to class or apply it to work. So that's really helpful. The other thing I think, in line or to echo what Emily and Jonathan said around motivation, I took like 5 years off in between masters and starting my doctoral work. And not for any particular reason, like I don't know if that's the right length of time, but that for me was the time where I realized that I had a passion to explore something in a topic that I wanted to pursue, and then that was the time for me to go. I think I got advice right after PASA of like at least exploring the EDD or PhD within like a year or two, so you don't get out of the habit of writing papers or whatever, you know, the advice was. But to me, it was way more important that I find something that I'm really passionate about. because they're absolutely right. That self-motivation is the only thing that completes it. There's a joke that a good dissertation is a completed one, and there's a reason for that. And that is that it's all self-motivated. And if it's something you're not passionate about or some topic that you just lose interest in, then it's really, really hard to do. So I would in terms of timeline and when to do that, and the complications I've seen other people go through, is wait to start until you know at least a general concept of what you want to explore, rather than just going into it for the sake of getting the letters and moving along in your career.
So we'll transition to our last question that was submitted. So how does your doctorate enable you to do the work that you want to do? I'll look at you, Emily.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to talk over anybody. I always think if you're working in higher education, then degrees are the currency that you're working with. When you're talking about a field that is education, what's valued in education, the currency is education. So that's why those letters are valued in our field. I think so. That's really what I would say about it, and that's why I would recommend going and getting your doctorate eventually. And I agree that it's not necessarily a you must go get it right now, but I think eventually, depending on what you want to do. I think for me, I agree with Dan. When I was going through, I really found ways to do theory to practice work with what I did in my degree program, the theories I was learning and trying to implement programs. I think that the challenge now as a full-time practitioner, having completed my degree, is how do I take those theory to practice moments and make them happen in my day-to-day? How do I structure that? So I've done things like start research groups within, or inter-institution research groups, or starting reading programs where you do articles and then have best practices conversations with colleagues. And I think that for me, my work is so deeply rooted in the degree that I got, like I can't even tell you. And then also my dissertation still comes back because that's something that I worked on that I was really passionate about. It's something that is it's on my resume. I think it's influenced my career choices. The types of colleagues that I solicit and hang out with. I think that it all kind of interrelates.
Just quickly for me, I think it's just where I want to go with my career, understanding my 5, 10, 20-year plan, and where I want to be in life. I ultimately see a degree, a doctoral degree, part of that. And so again, it came down to timing, but really understanding what you want to do. And plans change and things change, and that's fine. But for me, in my future, I think wanting to go up through the ranks. If it's in higher education administration, definitely getting that degree to support what I want to be doing in my future.
Yeah, I agree with that. And my dissertation is going to be on engaging men, particularly at small schools, in violence prevention, and obviously that's a huge topic right now, just anywhere. Anything that's a derivation of Title IX complications is a hot button issue. So I just happened to time it right. I didn't do that on purpose. But that is certainly playing out every day. It played out this morning in what we're doing here in my institution. So I think that's really important. I also think that like we talked about a little bit about the letters. I think if you have administrative, like climbing the ranks, like we were just talking about, as far as your professional goals, it helps a lot with that. If nothing else, in the terms of like my cohort, for example, there's people from literally all over the country, but in very, very different positions from me. They're going through this program in my cohort, so I can go to them when I have a question in my work life, just asking if they have any resources on like supporting international students. I did that yesterday. We have people at Princeton. We have people at Colorado Costa Mesa University. Like there's all these random, very different institutions from where I am, and so it's a very fun. When we come together to talk about something, we have very, very different perspectives on whatever the issue is that we're discussing. So if it's Title IX things, or if it's finance or budgeting or whatever, there's very, very different perspectives, and that helps me as a professional gain from their experience through this cohort model that has really paid dividends one semester in the program so far.
Is Arlen paused?
Well, I think Arlen's frozen. Can we end it ourselves?
Right? Yeah. Well, I would kind of echo something that Dan pointed out earlier, that you know, a good dissertation is a finished dissertation, right? I think honestly, you can never truly finish. And that's the beauty of it, is that it's not necessarily about producing new work. I think that's what they tell you. You're trying to produce new research, you're trying to add to the field, but it's also about just deeply exploring a topic and learning how to deeply engage in some kind of higher educational issue that you're passionate about. So learning how to learn about things, I think, is truly the point of an EDD or a PhD. And I think that's why it's such a powerful program, because it teaches you how to be engaged in research and a consumer of research along the way. But I think you could continue researching your topic. I could chase down all of these leads that I developed in my dissertation for 20 years, and that could be my entire life's work. Like, I really could do that. So at some point you have to just kind of say, I've done enough, and I'm completed with this, and then but hopefully that's what it does, is that a doctoral program will kind of excite you and to get you excited about learning about things in the field and remaining engaged, because I think the worst thing we can do as educators is become apathetic and not engage in current topics and issues that are of import, and stay abreast of what's going on in the field.
Sorry about that. I think I experienced technical difficulties online. I don't know what all of you saw, so I think I missed a good 3 minutes of the conversation.
You had a really good pause space. It was excellent.
Oh.
Still says live on our end, so it should be fine.
Well, since I'm the one hosting it, I wonder what the YouTube video will like pull up as. Like.
We'll find out. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll just edit out. We'll see. So it looks like we do have one live viewer right now. So if you have time, live viewer, if you want to send a question, you can. But other than that, were there any things that us as PASA students we didn't ask that we should have asked when it comes to this topic?
For me, and what I'm realizing as I'm going through this, is that there needs to be a personal piece in here. There needs to be something that grounds you to wanting to do this, and it goes back to motivation. A lot of the work that I do within as a practitioner is a lot on diversity and multicultural affairs, and so that's where I center myself, because that's where my passion is. And so when I'm doing my coursework, when I'm being challenged, when I have professors who aren't resonating with that, that's what I can center myself on to really continue on to do what I want to do. And it's what Emily was just talking about, I think, and finding that thing that really just gets you to the end. And regardless of how you get there, it's that you got there. And the more that I am sitting in class, the more that I'm learning about different topics and areas of interest, it all comes back to, one of the reasons that I'm doing this is so I can really understand how I can best serve students of color. It's really how I can best learn about myself. There's a reflexive piece in there, and that's part of the motivational piece, and it's really understanding, having that conversation with yourself. Are you ready to do this? Why are you trying to do this? Where is this coming from? And in the end, making the decision for yourself, regardless of everything else out there. You're the one who has to do the work in the end, and it's not fun or easy work all the time. So really, you have to have a good reason to be doing this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having a strong why is exactly what I would say. I think that is a critical piece of advice that all three of us have said. You have to have a strong reason going in, a strong reason why you're engaged in the topic that you choose, a strong reason why you pick the faculty member that you do. And some of that may be what Jonathan was talking about, me search, so researching about me, which I think a lot of people do. And a lot of people who are in social sciences research are doing research because they want to learn more about themselves, which is really powerful. Of course, you should caution about bias and such, but so I would say that's the biggest factor that I would talk about, is making sure that you have a strong reason to going in, and then you'll definitely finish.
I like that term, me search. But in a similar way, I think it's important to recognize what your own, the goal should be attaining the degree. So recognizing what your own strengths are in that way and where your weaknesses are. For me, the cohort model, especially of like PASA, for example, was really, really helpful. And my cohort members and I were just on campus in Colorado a couple weeks ago discussing this. I don't know, like the small cohort model is the way for me to go, because I need that sort of close support of that small community to be able to do this and do this well. So for me, that's a huge component of it, because I'm not, everything we just said about self-motivating is true. I'm not very good at that, and I know that about myself. So having people that I meet with frequently, that we keep each other accountable to the work that we're supposed to be doing, is really, really helpful for me. So I'm enjoying that piece of it, and I know that had I been in either a bigger program or a different program where we weren't working as closely together, I would not have been able to be as successful in something like that. So just knowing that about yourself, I think that's really important to consider when you're looking at different programs and how they're structured and what they offer.
So it looks like our viewer hasn't submitted any questions, which is fine. So we'll transition into our closing remarks. So if there are any final thoughts that you have, or any main takeaways, like if you were only to know one thing from this Google Hangout.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to answer the initial posed question, EDD or PhD. I would advocate a response that would be neither, both, whichever one you want. Honestly, I would say, to answer that question, there is no right path. It's whatever path fits you best, where you are and what your goals are. So I would say, honestly, you can listen to us or not listen to us. It just depends on, where you are and, what resonates with you. Because my path, is different from Dan's path, is different from Jonathan's path, is different from all the thousands of people who are getting these degrees. And your path may be completely different, and that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Because no matter where you want to get, I would say that it's your choice, and it's a highly personal choice. So I would get as much information as you possibly can, and then choose one, or choose neither, or do something completely different. It just depends on what you want to do.
I think I would add, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And part of that is, I've talked with a couple people who are going to the PhD and EDD program because they feel pressure from, family or other people that they needed a doctoral degree for some reason. And I see them struggling sometimes, and I see them trying to find that motivation. And I have plenty of friends who the doctoral program, a doctorate degree is not in their sights, and it's fine with them, and that's completely fine, because you can go just as far without a doctoral degree if you're truly passionate about something, if you truly commit yourself to something. And so, EDD or PhD, sometimes it could be neither, and you don't get that doctoral degree, like Emily said, and being okay with that, and really understanding what is right for you. And I mean, I would hate for someone to go through all this work and pay all this money, and then, find out that they didn't get out of it what they wanted to get out of it. So, was it worth it in the end for you? I would hate for someone to feel that way. So really, really make sure that you go in knowing what you want, talking with as many people as you can, visiting the schools, talking with alumni, talking with faculty members, to really get that feel for that fit.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly add to that I think that point about being passionate about what you're doing is really, really important. And I know so many people that are, there's a term for it. They've completed everything except their dissertation, their ABD, everything or anything but dissertation. And I don't know, just like what you were saying, Jonathan, about why commit all that time and like being tired at morning meetings and buying all sorts of books that are just going to sit there on your table and not have the letters. Like there's a point to doing that that's a professional benefit. But I would say really ask people who you know probably won't agree with each other and see what they have to say. I want to work in small private liberal arts institutions, and I want to be a VP, and I probably want to be a president someday. And so a dissertation is really not negotiable in that equation. But the field of higher ed is so much more broad than that, that what Jonathan was saying just a minute ago about you can really do anything you want with it is so incredibly important. So if a dissertation of some sort, so a PhD or an EDD is necessary for your career goals, great, do it on what timeline works for you. But that's not true for everybody, and you can be incredibly successful, in a lot of different ways without the dissertation. So I think it's a personal choice, like Emily was saying, and I totally agree with that. So I would say make your own choices for your own career, get a lot of different kind of input, and then roll with it. It's pretty fun. I mean, we're making it sound a little scary. It's crazy, and it's a weird amount of time. But we're home. I mean, maybe if we check in a year from now, I'll feel differently because I'm only a semester in. But I'm really, really liking it. It's a nice break from the sort of normal grind of my work day to have conversations with people that are in very different work environments and see how they're doing and seeing what we're doing well and where we can grow and all that sort of thing. So I'm loving what we're doing.
Well, I want to thank all of our alumni for sharing their wonderful insight and wisdom. So I'm going to make a few plugs, PASA Network related plugs. So tomorrow is the last day for PASAgrams, our second annual PASAgrams. So if you're interested in sending a PASAgram to a former professor or to a work colleague or even to your PASA mentee or mentor, you have until tomorrow at 7 p.m. to fill out that Google form. The other major event that's happening for this month, so PASA Network is actually hosting a speed networking and mixer event on February 28th from 10 to 12:30. So this is open for both PASA alumni and PASA students. Lunch will be provided. So look out for an Eventbrite link within the Facebook pages for current PASA students, for PASA alumni, and the LinkedIn group, as well as an email, because we're trying to keep registration, or we're limited in the capacity that we can operate, because we want a 1-to-1 ratio of alumni to students. But besides that are all of my plugs for today. So next month's topic is time for change, moving up the ladder. So have a wonderful Wednesday, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.